Welcome to Mystic Fool's Journey Podcast. I'm Anna, and this is Ruth. Howdy! And this is an occult history podcast. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the history of Lilydale, New York. So let's dive on in.
Okay, so I've been super fascinated by the town of Lilydale for a while now. And just to give you a general overview, before we dive into this witchy soup, Lilydale is like a town. It's a soup indeed. Maybe it's more of like a stew or a, what's the thing that the witches have? A cauldron?
A cauldron.
Yeah. This witch's brew. Okay, so Lilydale is this town in upstate New York that is basically a spiritualism central. There's only around 250 people that actually claim residence there. And it actually looks like a storybook town with old Victorian architecture and just in general a real cutie core vibe. But the twist is that nearly every resident there claims to have some degree of talent as a spiritual medium.
Ooh.
I know, isn't that fun?
Do you think the spirits fight? That was the one thing. I'm like, do you think they ever get messages that's tell Linda that this spirit said this?
I would only think so. 250 people is enough people. That's like a high school size, at least a small high school. That's
very
enough
small.
For some general spirit drama to go down, spirit clique,
gossip,
spirit bullying.
Yeah.
I want to know the lowdown on that. So, but luckily there are some rules as to who can actually operate professionally as a medium in the town, for money and all that. Around 30 mediums can do their thing in Lilydale and proudly advertise their services with shingles hanging outside the cottages. The Lilydale Assembly, which is kind of like the big shots in charge of the whole community, the spiritualism mafia, you might say.
Oh.
Just kidding. Let's not associate them with the mafia.
Yeah, they don't actually do anything violent.
No, they seem like really cool people.
Yeah.
But they gave the nod to all of them and certified them as competent and upright. And these guys claim to be, quote, the world's largest center for science, philosophy, and religion of spiritualism.
That's a bold claim for 250 people.
I know.
I don't know if it's the largest center, but maybe it's the most dense center.
I know, right? Once you tack on religion of spiritualism at the end, I think it really niches them down. But the science and philosophy part, definitely not.
Yeah, that they went real broad and then they're but here's the footnote.
Exactly. So the summer season is really when things kick off in this town. Every summer, a swarm of spiritualists flock here to chat up mediums who claim to have a direct line to the spiritual remnants of the once living. For a little bit of cashola, these mediums promise to pass on messages from the spirits to the living souls.
I wouldn't hate visiting this place. I'm very intrigued. I feel like this definitely sounds like the Renaissance Festival for spiritualists, or Comic-Con for spiritualists. This whole summer season where everybody flocks there.
Yeah.
My goal personally would be to see as many mediums as possible in a day.
Oh, that's a great idea.
I would like to know who's following me around. Tell me about what spirit guides are hanging out around me. Are we getting different messages, mixed signals? What should I know?
Yeah, there you go. That's a great idea. I'd probably want to ask every medium the same question.
Yes.
And see what the answers are. Or I'd want to know, I wouldn't want to talk to anybody related to me. I'd probably want to talk to, some sort of a public figure from the past and try to solve a mystery.
Ooh, okay, well, way more fun.
I know, right?
What if we just do a little, initial digging so we know what kind of, names to ask the mediums to connect us to? And
yes.
We can go around sleuthing and trying to get as many psychic clues as possible to solve this mystery.
I think this is a perfect idea. Nothing could go wrong.
Nothing at all.
So people who have been into the whole spirits messing with our world thing, they've been into it for ages and ages and ages. It's an ancient belief found in a lot of different religions. And fast forward to the mid-1850s, and the U.S. had over 1 million folks calling themselves spiritualists, with almost 70 newspapers dedicated to the cause. They formed study groups and churches left and right. Sure, they had minor differences, but the core idea was, and still is, that there's an afterlife where you become a spiritual being, but still keep some of your earthly identity and interests.
Yeah, so I was looking into this. It's it seems chill, spiritualism.
Yeah.
So when you look at it, like, they believe that your awareness or your consciousness survives after your physical body dies, along with your spirit. And my understanding, my understanding of spiritualism is pretty basic, but it can be like more loose than other religions and dogmas because it doesn't have like a lot of hoops to jump through or like complicated mythology that you're supposed to believe in. But one of the key beliefs is that our lives continue after death through our spirit in the next plane of existence on the spiritual realm. And our spirit continues to learn and evolve. It's not like, hey, you died, you did it, like, we're done, just chill here. It's like your spirit will still take the lessons it learned on this plane of existence and continue them in the next plane. And like, so if you were a medium here, one of the things this may or may not be true across all spiritualists, but at least some, it's like if you were a medium on Earth, you will continue to be a medium in the spirit world, and you will like be a spirit medium to humans, human mediums, that kind of thing. Like,
oh, sure. Yeah. Did you ever watch the most recent what's the movie with the Disney movie, and it's got the house.
Disney movie.
And it's a haunted house.
Oh, is it Haunted Mansion?
Yeah, the Haunted Mansion. Jamie Lee Curtis was a spiritual medium that had died and passed on in the Haunted Mansion. And then, I forget the comedian's name, but she's freaking hilarious in it. But only the spirit medium can connect to that spirit medium and like solve, the spooky guy's haunted mansion thing.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's that. That's literally like that. Where it's just kind of like,
it's like that. It's a fun movie. You should watch it.
That is fun. Super cool. But yeah, that's a great analogy. It's basically like, hey, you're going to continue your work in the spirit plane. You do leave behind all the like physical ailment situations because you don't have a body anymore, but it's not like, hey, you dead and you're done. Like, you get to chill in the afterlife forever. Like, they believe there's like a continual growth process that goes on with your spirit.
That's nice. I think that's in general, a lot of people's hope.
Right? Yeah, I was like, it's actually it's really good at the end of The Good Place, because that is like that's like the ending of it is like, hey,
oh really? Okay.
Everybody got really complacent in the afterlife, but once they gave them another way to like move on, it was like, oh, now we care again, and they started like doing things.
That's so funny. I love that show.
It's a great show.
So in 1871, a bunch of these spiritualists, who later became the Lilydale Assembly, started hanging out by Cassadaga Lake during the summers. They went all out, building 200 cottages, a huge hotel, auditoriums, amphitheaters, and picnic pavilions, all still in use to this day. And the place became a cool spot for free thinkers and activists, attracting big names like Susan B. Anthony. Is there any name bigger?
Is there anybody bigger?
Who made her debut there in 1891, speaking to a crowd of 3,000 people in an amphitheater decked out with flags.
I am so impressed. They actually followed through with the whole let's get friends together and form a commune. Like, this is one option, and it still exists, so it doesn't have to end in weird, like, murder-suicides. Like,
yes.
You can do this. So impressed. A lot of millennials keep talking about it. Maybe we should get on it.
Well, and it's just like a great way of doing it, because it seems like everybody has their own way of supporting themselves still.
Yeah.
So it's not like as intertwined as like a commune gets.
Yeah. It's not as like, oh no. It's like you still earn money. Like,
yeah.
Like we said, like they have to approve you to do mediumship specifically, but like as long as you're a medium and you live there, it's not like you can't get income outside of Lilydale or like have a remote job.
Right.
I do find it super interesting that Susan B. spoke there, because when I was in high school, like, I don't remember learning about how closely tied the suffrage movement was with things like spiritualism or alternative spiritual discourse, because we talked about how Elizabeth Cady Stanton was, while satanic feminism like didn't exist in that phrase, she was a part of a group that was reinterpreting the Bible and Satan's role.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, we didn't learn about that in public school. And it's like, but it was such a hub, all of these alternative spiritual movements for women to find power and realize that like, oh, I can hold station. Like, it was okay for women to be mediums and psychics. Like, for some reason that was like a pass because I guess men weren't interested in it.
Yeah.
And so when they're like, oh, I can earn my own money and I can be my own person and follow my own interests if I'm allowed to do this, every woman should have this. And so you get a lot of this like coinciding beliefs of like spiritualism plus equality and abolitionists as well. Susan B. was a big abolitionist. And I think she also she actually grew up Quaker, which Quaker was one of the few, and she maintained that Quaker status throughout her life. Like, I think they like at the time, like, you actually like signed a book, you know, in the Quaker church or whatever, and she maintained that status throughout her life regardless of what she actually did or churches. And I think if I'm remembering correctly, Quaker was a more radical, quote unquote, form of Christianity at the time because it taught people that humans are equal. Like, it was like the form of Christianity that you're like, should have always been the case. Like, and so it just like made sense. She's like, she grew up around a bunch of abolitionists and her parents working for equal rights and to get rid of slavery. And so she's like, oh yeah, for sure. We don't like slavery and when women should vote. Like, come on.
Yeah, that's cool. And they're just so good at the oatmeal.
That's so good at this. Such good oatmeal.
Yeah, so apparently like Susan B. spoke there a total of 3 times. And Elizabeth Cady Stanton came with her 1 time.
That's cool. Yeah, they were buds.
They are buds. So these spiritual groups have always been into shaking things up, supporting women's rights, abolition, and temperance. These days, the Lilydale Assembly is a nonprofit religious crew, and they own all the land in the village. Residents get long-term leases, and they can only sell or rent to fellow spiritualists. There's an annual maintenance fee, like an HOA or something like that, and summer visitors toss in an entrance fee at the community gate for $10. You have to get in.
Okay.
Yeah, that seems fair. So yeah, inside it's like a cool buffet of talks and demos every day, and they cover all sorts of new agey topics. The speakers aren't required to be hardcore spiritualists. Last summer, you could learn about past life regression, the Venus-Mars cycle, angelic messages, universal peace shield of truths. That sounds cool. Expanding your mediumship with Vince and John. So hit up Vince and John if you'd like to expand your mediumship. Therapeutic touch, just like hands-on stuff, not like massage or anything like that.
Yeah.
And then Reiki 1 and 2, which is like, some Tibetan wisdom on transcendental and transformative energy or whatever. So it's quite the lineup.
They've, like we said earlier, like spiritualism's kind of loose. It's like, it's super chill. I actually wanted to look up, they have 9 principles that are stated like on their website. And they're all pretty basic. Like, there's not a lot. It can kind of like complement any, other belief system or any other practitioners. There's a lot of like neo-pagans who are also spiritualists, Reiki, obviously, things like that fit into it. So it kind of is like, feels like the next step if you're like coming out of a hardcore religion. It's like there's a lot of Christian spiritualists, like in the modern age, like spiritualism split in a couple different ways where it's like Christians who like are like dipping their toes outside of the hardcore Christianity and rules will call themselves like Christian spiritualists because they're like, I do believe in this afterlife thing, but I don't like how modern Christianity is doing these other things that are, sexist or racist or classist.
Yeah.
In the simplified form, the 9 principles, they're very short, are: we believe in God, number 1. They usually call it an infinite intelligence. We believe that the infinite intelligence is expressed through all of nature. Number 3, true religion is living in obedience to nature's laws. 4, we never die. That goes with the whole spirit moving on and your consciousness with it. Yeah. 5, spiritualism proves that we can talk with people in the spirit world. 6, be kind, do good, and others will do likewise. 7, we bring unhappiness to ourselves by errors we make, and we will be happy if we obey the laws of life.
Okay.
Okay, I know. I'm like, I have questions. 8, every day is a new beginning.
Ooh.
Positive.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. And 9, prophecy and healing are expressions of the infinite intelligence.
Okay.
That's it.
Pretty neutral.
Yeah, pretty neutral. Like there's
Yeah,
and then they've got some like extra stuff on their website if you want to like dig into what some of those other things mean a little more, but kind of it. There's not like a bunch of books to read or anything.
cool. I dig that. We Never Die goes hard.
We Never Die is probably like the one most people are interested in.
Yeah.
It can mesh with anything, and not that that's ever stopped anybody from like cherry picking and holding a belief system that is kind of like in antithesis to spiritualism, but it's a place to dip your toes in.
Yeah, dip your toes on in. So then like the spiritualists, like you said, they're all about the free will vibe. So they're not down with the whole like fortune telling scene. Like that's a pretty distinct distinction to make. That means like crystal ball gazers, palm and tea leaf readers, they can't like set up shop in Lilydale. It's pretty much exclusively mediumship. And I'm sure that the mediums use like, tarot and other methods to like channel that in different ways.
I'm super curious about that specifically because it was behind a paywall, but of course the one quote that popped up from a guy who lives in Lilydale is he was saying, he's like, oh, you should not have to use things like crystal balls, tarot cards, pendulums. He called them He called them toys. He was like, these are, he's like, those are just toys. So I was like, ooh, ouch, so judgmental.
I like it. I like the hard stance.
He's like, no, you got to just be able to do this.
That makes sense.
I don't know. It's strange to me. I'm like, I'm sure there's someone there that has tarot cards.
I'm sure. All right. So what's up with this whole thing and how did it come about? Let's dive in. So back in the spring of 1848.
Oh, okay.
Man, 1848 is just so long ago.
It does feel very long ago.
We've got these two sisters, Margaret and Kate Fox, the Fox sisters. I'm sure you've heard about them. I think we've mentioned them offhand a couple of times. Future episode.
Oh, really? They have enough history for that.
Yes. So they discovered that they can shoot the breeze with spirits. They were the first one in America. The Fox family was chilling in Hydesville in Wayne County at the time. The spirit chit-chat was like a regular thing for months, but March 31st that year was the day that they made history. The girls were having a convo with a spirit they nicknamed Mr. Splitfoot. Weird nickname.
Like, come on, just something like cute.
Yeah, I know, or just like normal, like Jason.
Yeah, they're like, look, it's Cotter.
Right.
What's up?
And the neighbors were just standing there like jaws on the floor watching this show. And after that, the Fox sisters moved to the Cornhill area of Rochester with some pals. And the spiritualism movement caught fire, earning the whole region the nickname the Burned Over District. More folks started showing off their spirit chatting skills, and the movement took off in America. It was already kind of a thing in England at the time, but the Fox sisters are the ones that we credit with, kicking things off over here. Even though the Fox sisters later spilled the beans that they were kind of just making things up, it didn't stop the spiritualist wave. It just kept growing, pulling in new believers left and right. And that show the Fox sisters put on in March 1848 is considered the official birth of spiritualism.
That's got to be rough for the people. Like, I feel like there's definitely some people who found out that they were lying and it would put a real damper on things. Like, I feel like I would question. I would be like, yeah, I got to take a minute to think about this. Like, it was all founded on a lie.
Yeah.
Right? Obviously, it didn't stop anybody. There's plenty of people that just already believed it, and this gave them, like, permission to come out of the woodwork, which,
right,
great. But, like, oh, it's not fun to find out your movement is built off of a charade.
I know. It's just, like, a bummer. Like, it feels like, people do this sort of thing all the time, even nowadays. Everybody, does this whole con thing.
The Astros won the World Series, and then everyone found out a year later that they had been cheating, and you're like, ouch.
Ooh, yeah.
It's a big blow.
It is a big blow. Yeah, it's just a bummer when it's like something like this where it's like so closely tied to people's vulnerabilities.
Exactly. You're just kind of like, this isn't just like a a fun thing that was happening. It's like, this is my belief system. Was I actually talking with anybody who was dead? Like,
right. So let's rewind a bit. 4 years before the Fox sisters stole the spotlight, in Leona, New York, a guy named Jeremiah Carter with some physical challenges invited a hypnotist from Vermont to work his magic and heal him. But guess what? The hypnotist had to bail for an emergency. While he was MIA, the community decided to give this whole trance thing a shot themselves. They were going to DIY it.
oh boy, I have a lot of questions.
I have so many questions, and there's no information on the internet about this.
Yeah, that's another shady part about this. Like, we're not really sure what his disability was or not. Yeah.
Yeah. So, surprise, surprise, they managed to put Carter in a trance. Who would have thought? And he started chatting with the dead. The Fox sisters' fame just added fuel to the fire for this group, and in 1855, they officially became the first spiritualist society of Leona. It's like a ghostly revolution, right?
Oh, spooky. Yeah, I have a lot of questions because, like, if he was looking to get healed, I'm like, did he get healed, or were the spirits like, hey man, you're gonna leave your body behind, but let's talk about sending and receiving messages to the spirit world instead. Just
right.
Forget your earthly problems. Talk with me.
At the time, like, mesmerism was like a health trend.
It was.
And
100%.
It seems like, if I were to use my guessing skills here, it seems like Jeremiah Carter kind of had a group of people, and they knew that they wanted to start this thing, and they wanted to start it with a splash. And they kind of needed to use their own personalities to make this whole thing happen.
It's marketing.
It really is
marketing. It's like an activation. For those of you who don't know, a lot of times when, like, we've worked in advertising, and activations are essentially like big stunty things that capture people's attention. So think like Red Bull when the guy jumped from space, like that kind of stuff. This is that. This is them being like, we got to start this thing up big and we got to gather some attention. So let's make it a big deal, start a story. But yeah, apparently Jeremiah Carter was like encouraged by the spirits once he like knew how to talk with them to start up a camp, right?
Yep, exactly. And so that's kind of where it led. They just kept doing this whole thing. And then back in 1873, there's this dude named Willard Alden who owned like a decent sized farm, which is now the Lilydale Hotel and Woods, just outside the gates of Lilydale. So Jeremiah Carter claims that he can't stop hearing voices telling him to hit up Alden's farm and kick off a spiritualist camp meeting. And so they make it happen, and the crew starts gathering there for summer picnics and camp meetings. Fast forward a bit, Mr. Alden kicks the bucket, and his heirs aren't thrilled with the financial deal that they got. So in 1879, the board decides to shake things up, and they cough up $1,845 and snag 20 acres of land from John Fisher, which, hell of a deal, man.
I know that was a lot of money back then.
I know.
But I'm dying at the idea of like, oh, you got 20 acres for like less than $2,000?
I know. It's truly, it ignites a passion in me that I know is a bit, unfair to the inflation of the time. But goddamn.
I want to look up, can we find inflation for, what is it, 1875?
Yeah. Oh, damn. Okay, so $1,845 in 1873 is worth $48,691 today. So still a hell of a deal for 20 acres of land.
I was going to say, like,
of raw land.
I was going to say, just 20 acres of land is wild because, like, $40,000 is a down payment on, like, a small house.
Yeah, and like, considering upstate New York is cheaper land-wise, but they're getting raw land to build on. Like, nobody would give them that deal nowadays. That's crazy. Mm-mm. Okay, moving on from that lucky stroke of luck.
We're appalled. Yeah, if you guys are selling 20 acres of land, call us for $40K. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, right. We'll do it.
We'll start a camp.
So guess what? That's what we know about the birth of the Lilydale Assembly. And so it was called something else first, like the Society of Leona. And then there's this side story of like, how did it become Lilydale? And there was a couple of stories like my favorite one that I remember was that there were 2 swans on Cassadaga Lake and they were named Lily and Dale. So
Cute.
then they just named the town Lilydale. I thought that was kind of cute.
I like that. That's adorable. I was hoping that Lily and Dale would be like, I don't know, 2 of the spirits that helped them start it up.
Yeah, that would be good. That does sound familiar. I wonder
I'm sure that there's another like myth floating around that was an option where it's like Lily and Dale, the ones who contacted Jeremiah Carter.
Exactly.
But we don't know. We don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. You can give it a Google yourself and let us know. So while spiritualism in general is a global thing, it's got a special vibe in the U.S., especially in New York, which is kind of the mecca of this faith because of Lilydale and the Fox sisters and all that. So that's just like a bit of what's what of Lilydale. It's just like 60 minutes south of Buffalo. Costs $10 to enter if you want to go visit. But they even moved the cottage where the famous Fox sisters lived to Lilydale in 1915. But bummer alert, it did burn down in 1955. And even though their old home is gone, Lilydale keeps the spirit, pun intended, of those early medium pioneers alive and kicking.
Heck yeah.
So I think we should plan to retire in Lilydale and party with some spirits when we're old.
I'm down. I mean, I'm down for a summer trip too, just to do some sleuthing. I am scared of the spiritual test. I think that, like, if I was to go into mediumship, I'd probably be decent at automatic writing.
Yeah,
I think
there you go.
That might be the way in for me.
Nice.
I don't know. Do you think you'd have is there a particular field you'd
automatic
writing?
I would be all about the past life regression.
Oh,
like, I want to tell people what they did. I want to get to know them. I want to, tell them what areas of the world they were in and like little stories about their life. I love that. Yeah. That feels like a miniature like version, because my ultimate dream is just to like be a cult leader, and tell people who to marry and like split up families and like have ultimate control over people's life. Past life regression feels like, a more minor version of that doesn't really hurt anybody, It doesn't like I could just tell people what they dig and what they were doing in past lives. So that sounds like a fun time to me.
They're never going to let us live there now that this podcast exists.
I mean,
unless you get really good, maybe we should start taking classes. Right.
Let's scrub our socials of all of this and just dedicate the next 50 years of life to retirement at Lilydale.
That, why not? People have done crazier things.
And you never know. There might be like an EMP that comes and wipes out the grid and they'll never know what we've said on this podcast.
That's true. We can just chill and act like it never happened. Clean slate. There is, in more recent news, a lawsuit against Lilydale.
Oh, yeah. Give us the lowdown.
On the TikTok. We talked about how like you have to be a spirit medium to live in Lilydale. You have to go through tests to prove your mediumship. From what I could gather, and they've kind of like changed a little bit over the years, but from what I could gather, like you're essentially you're being evaluated by the Lilydale Assembly. So you're doing readings and clairvoyance and mediumship for each of the members. There were some people who described that they were doing it as like a group, like everyone was in the room and they delivered the message individually to each of the people on the assembly. Some people described like doing it with just one person in the room at a time so that they wouldn't be affected by the others because then they evaluate you. Oh, but there are these, I think it's 3 women are suing Lilydale because they were, essentially you're like, you have to like pass with an 85%.
Wow. Is that a B-?
I get it. That's like 85 is like a solid B.
Nice.
That's B. I think if it's, but originally I think it's like the women are saying like they were told they needed an 82%.
Oh, they got that in writing?
Yeah, I guess that's the key thing. So, however, how I'm piecing this together is that the people who are doing the evaluations have some sort of like numerical ranking system. They add them all up, get the average to find if you're within the 85% and above. These women were said that they were told they needed an 82 and that they like retroactively changed it to 85 because they're like, we got our evaluations and we passed the 82% benchmark, but then we were denied it. And so they're basically claiming damages of like, we're losing out on the ability to make income. As well as like being attached to Lilydale. They are also like, they're arguing that their reputation is being damaged now that they've like quote unquote failed these evaluations, they passed the 82%. That's still pretty good. But apparently
that 3%,
that 3% is like now damaging like their reputation and ability to make money outside of Lilydale. So there's a little lawsuit going on, and I am very curious how they're gonna evaluate this in court, because it's not like, I don't think our court system is prepped to handle mediums in any way, shape, or form.
No, not at all. I mean, I feel like we're, number one, I mean, maybe there's a legal argument here that, you know, I'm not a lawyer. Let's just say that first. I'm not a lawyer.
We're not doctors, we're not lawyers. Let's be clear.
But, you know, I appreciate the standards that Lilydale is upholding. I don't want no Joe Schmo medium, you know, living here. I want the best of the best. Let's keep this ship tight for sure. But also, try again next year. You know?
Right?
I feel like they definitely couldn't, you know, bar you from trying again next year. I don't know. I just want to know what this test is.
What I've kind of like seen is that like you perform mediumship for each of the board members or whatever group is evaluating you. What I don't know is how, like, what their evaluation scale is. Like, are you performing mediumship and like giving each of these people messages, and then they can actually also receive messages and it has to be match up? Like,
that's what I would think. Like, that's the only way. Or
like,
at
hey, I
least,
received a message from this person. What did they tell you? And you're like,
right. Yeah, that makes sense. Or like, you know, they have their own personal like spirit guides that they talk to, and they would have to like mention in something about each of them. Here's the thing. You know, now that we're in the modern day, I would be, you know, conning this whole thing up the wazoo. Like, in the summer season, let's get all the mediums on a Slack channel and let's start, you know, passing some info around to these people and really pumping up our numbers of accuracy here. It could really be a thing.
Slack channel? I feel like that's a way to do it. Yeah, I don't really know if I want to be a part of this con. It sounds like a lot of work, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, anyways, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. If you're a fan of the podcast, we need you to do this so we can find new fans. And also tell all your spirit guides to follow us and subscribe as well.
Actually, ask your spirit guides what else we should talk about. We're down for suggestions.
Yeah, there we go. So tell your friends, follow us on all socials. Our handles are Sweet Death Inc. and Mystic Full Tarot on all platforms. See you later.
Bye.